stopped.
Video it.
Yes.
You pull that one first. All right, let them get ready.
Hey,
Y'all ready?
hey,
Come on, guys. Back. John, put it back. Yeah, behind the station.
Watch out. Y'all move. I got it. Watch out.
Back up there. Just one. Are you okay?
Grab what? Go.
Do you have any weapons? Coming through, okay? What's your name? What's your name, man?
Just a girl. Just a girl. How are you, honey? This is
bolt cutters.
This is our best. He's a paramedic.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we're going to get you out of there, okay?
Just hang loose for me.
Can you imagine being trapped inside a storage container for almost 2 months, not knowing when or if you'll ever leave? The only contact to the outside world you have is with a monster by the name of Todd Kohlhepp, who comes and brings you food, takes you out sometimes to his house to rape and torture you, only to bring you back to this dark, cold, horrible prison, chained by the neck and ankle. What you just heard was the sheriff's office, police, breaking in to the storage container to find Caleb Brown inside. Today's episode on Mind of a Mass Murderer is about Todd Kohlhepp, who is not just a mass murderer, but also a serial killer. So come with me as we take a deep dive into the dark, cold waters of the twisted mind of Todd Kohlhepp. Psychopaths don't just arrive as adults. They demonstrate behavior in their childhoods and especially their teen years. Kohlhepp showed many disturbing signs. He was born on March 7th, 1971 in Florida and raised in South Carolina and Georgia. His parents would divorce when he was 2 years old, and he stayed in the custody of his mother, Regina Tagg. She married the following year. Kohlhepp was described as a troublesome child. Regina tried to maintain a sense of normalcy for Todd. His mother remembers a smart boy who liked to read the encyclopedia and sit on her lap while she read comics to him. And he would laugh and he would get tickled and he learned, she said. But it was not a happy home. Todd did not get along with his stepfather, and over the years he had expressed his desire to live with his biological father. And this would not happen until he was 12 years old. His father later said the only emotion his son was capable of was anger. Todd was a troubled boy after his parents' divorce. He would attack other children in nursery school, tear up their belongings, and by the age of 9 he was already in therapy. Todd had an explosive hair-trigger temper and a disturbing preoccupation with sex at 9 years old. He would often do things to get back at his mother. He would gain revenge on his mother any time she did something he didn't like. One time he stuffed bath towels down the toilet to flood the whole house. His mother grew tired of his behavior. He had become more and more difficult. I got tired of controlling it. I knew something was wrong inside, Tagg said. She put Todd into therapy, but he only got angrier. Todd had an inability to process anger in the same way most people know how to. Regina was at a loss, as both therapy and her passive and apologetic attitude had no effect on Todd. Like many sociopath psychopaths, Todd's aggression didn't stop with his classmates. He would take his anger out on animals, and he would go out and shoot birds, cats, and dogs with his BB gun. His mother had given him a goldfish in a fishbowl as a pet. Todd pretended to like the fish, and then shortly after he poured bleach into the bowl, taking sadistic pleasure in watching the goldfish die. Why did he do it? Here's Regina recalling that day.
I just let him have it about Cloroxing the goldfish. I said, what made you think you could do that? He just looked at me, he said, I didn't want it anymore.
One time he was on a school bus and he got angry with a girl and he took out a pair of scissors and stabbed her with it. Listen to how his mother plays down the situation. It's frightening.
He stabbed her in the leg, Not much. I mean, it didn't go deep.
It didn't go deep. With the therapy sessions not working, Regina sent Todd to a Georgia mental institution for 3 months because he could not get along with his classmates. He continued to hit on other children. She remembers reaching her breaking point when Todd was about 12, and she had just bought him a new bedroom set. And the next day I came home from work and he had taken a claw hammer to his new furniture, Tag said. He often threatened to kill himself. He was that angry. He was angry that I would not let him go to Arizona, she said. Todd had been wanting to go live with his biological father in Tempe. His mother, at her wit's end, finally says she let him go, hoping that a male figure would straighten him out. His disturbing, angry behavior only got worse. Todd was sent to live with his biological father, who had not seen him since he was 2 years old. He changed his last name to his father's and would eventually begin working odd jobs around town. An Arizona neighbor described Todd Kohlhepp as a devil on a chain. He actually locked her son in a dog kennel and rolled it around and then banged his head on clay pipes. While her son cried, Kohlhepp laughed. His father didn't seem to have a calming influence on Todd. In fact, living with his father seemed to exacerbate some of his violent tendencies. His father would collect guns and knives, teaching Todd how to blow things up and make bombs. Neither the bonding over dangerous weapons nor a decade-long desire to live with his father was enough to make for a happy and healthy father and son relationship. Todd wanted to spend time with his father, but his dad had numerous girlfriends. His lifelong delusion of a father who wanted him was crushed when he went back to live with his mother. The thing is, Regina didn't want him either. She would make numerous excuses to back out of taking her son back. His father even suggested that he be put up for adoption. The rejection from both his parents fueled more anger and rage in Todd. On November 25th, 1986, Kohlhepp crossed the line. At the age of 15, Todd kidnapped a girl in Tempe, Arizona. He had a crush on this girl, but she rejected his advances, wanting only to be friends. Instead, she had a crush on one of his friends, and the rejection sent him into a jealous rage. He was known by her family, and he went to her house and asked the girl's parents when she was going to be home. They told him that they were about to leave, and Todd saw an opportunity to be alone with the target of his anger, waiting until the girl's parents left. Todd was not a child you left alone, Regina Tagg said, recollecting how Todd's father left him alone at the house as he went off to deal with a family emergency with his own father. Todd was left alone for 3 days. He went back to the girl's home and lured her outside. He took this unsuspecting girl around to an alley. He put his father's .22 caliber revolver to her head and walked her back to his empty, parentless home. He pulled the trigger on the gun to scare her into submission, but it misfired. Terrified, the girl complied with Todd as he forced her back into the house. Todd would tie her up on his bed, duct tape her mouth shut, and place a knife next to the pillow where she lay her head, with a warning that if she screamed, he would kill her. He then raped her. After he finished, he walked her home with an ominous warning. He would kill her 3- and 6-year-old brothers if she told anyone. However, the girl's 6-year-old brother had frantically called the police saying that his sister was missing. A policewoman, Officer Cable, arrived to the girl's house, and shortly after the girl came through the back door, bruised and battered and in great distress. Despite the threat, the girl told Officer Cable what had happened to her. Todd was immediately arrested at his home. He remained emotionless as he was taken into custody, asking Officer Cable, quote, "What's going to happen to me? How much time am I going to get?" End of quote. He would be charged with kidnapping, sexual assault, and committing a dangerous crime against children. When interviewed about what had happened when he had been arrested in 1987, Kohlhepp coldly replied, "I raped a girl and I got caught." He said he committed the rape to get back at his father, who had been gone for 3 days with one of his girlfriends. He said he enjoyed guns and he was, quote, fooling around with one when it popped into his head that he could go use it to rape a victim. End of quote. He would plead guilty to the kidnapping charge, but the sexual assault charge would be dropped. For what reason? I don't know. It makes absolutely no sense. case was moved from juvenile to adult court. Todd was sentenced to 15 years in prison and was forced to register as a sex offender. The judge in this case, C. Kimball Rose, saw Todd as a lost cause. Quote, "At less than the age of 9, this juvenile was impulsive, explosive, and preoccupied with sexual content. He has not changed. He has been unabatedly aggressive to others and destructive of property since nursing school. He destroys his own clothing, personal possessions, and pets apparently on whim and caprice. Approximately 6 years of intervention in 15 years of life have resulted in abysmal failure. 25 months of the most intensive and expensive professional intervention, short of God's, will provide no protect for the public and no rehabilitation of this juvenile by any services or facilities presently available to the juvenile court." End of quote. That's quite the damning statement. Todd Kohlhepp, his lawyer and his mother wanted him to have a psychological assessment to see if he could be deemed as mentally unstable and serve time in a psychiatric hospital, hopefully shorter and easier time. I was able to find the court documents from the psychiatric evaluation, and I'm just going to outline some of the most important observations and professional opinions. This psychiatric evaluation was done by a Dr. Martig. Quote, "Results of psychological testing indicate that, with Todd, we have an individual with high levels of antisocial personality functioning. Test data indicates he is not an individual who is psychotic, although he is an individual with severe underlying emotional issues, which could result in an emotional deterioration in the future or continued aggressive behavior towards others in the future. He is an individual who does show some signs of psychomotor acceleration and signs of a great deal of ego inflation. It defines mechanisms in order to bolster feelings of low self-esteem and inadequacies. Furthermore, test data also indicates he is uncomfortable in social situations and especially had difficulty with any type of authority figure. It would appear if he is placed in any type of authority situation where he should follow others, he likely has difficulty doing this, especially when he's in a situation when he feels he should be in control. He is demanding behaviorally, self-centered, and likely will attempt to force others to do what he wants them to do in order to meet his own egocentric needs." End of quote. So the summary of this at the bottom of the document says, Dr. Martig diagnosed Todd as displaying an under-socialized, aggressive type conduct disorder and antisocial and narcissistic personality characteristic. Dr. Martig would rate the potential for Todd to act out in the future as being within the moderate to moderately high range. He said, quote, "I do believe his case is workable within the juvenile court system and specifically recommend a placement within the State Department of Corrections in their program for aggressive sexual offenders." End of quote. But as we know, the judge had him go to adult court, thank goodness, because that's where he needed to go, in my opinion, but I may be wrong there. When questioned how he thinks about the offense that affected him, the probation officer working with Todd said, when questioned how he thinks this offense has affected the victim, the defendant responded, "I've messed up my life too." Kohlhepp also did not take responsibility for what he did because, according to records, while he knew what he did was wrong, he thought the girl was 16 at the time. Like, that makes a difference. Todd said he thought a 15-year sentence would be unfair. He wanted 12 years or less because he said that it would allow him to get a job with the military, according to his pre-sentence report. Guy's delusional. The parents of the girl told the officer that the rape had, quote, "devastating effect on the entire family." The girl cried and was unable to communicate during most of an interview with the probation officer, and her parents said her grades and athletic ventures had deteriorated. They alleged that Kohlhepp was a violent and vicious person who shined a knife in the girl's face during the assault. They alleged that he knew her age at the time and had no sense of reality. Kohlhepp's probation officer wrote a similar description in court papers and added that, quote, he felt the world owed him something. And Kohlhepp's attorney, Ellen Bickert, stated, quote, he did not believe his client would go on to harm others in the future, end of quote. What a joke right there. He couldn't be more wrong, clearly. During his imprisonment, Kohlhepp was initially cited for violations that included some violent behavior, but after turning 20, he had no other records of disobedience. Not surprisingly, before the court date, Regina wrote a letter to the judge pleading with him to send Todd to his grandparents instead of jail. Quote, and this is one of my favorite Regina quotes, because, well, you'll hear it. He even walked the girl home. Does that sound like a dangerous criminal? End of quote. What a gentleman. He kidnapped and raped the girl, threatened her with a gun and a knife, and escorted her home to remind her that he would kill her brothers if she told anyone. If his mother's response to this horrible act was this, it's clear she is very much part of the problem. Willful ignorance or clueless. Same harm done either way. Here are some more excerpts from the letter that are very telling of Regina's attitude, belief system, and point of view, which, as you'll hear, shows a big reason why Todd's mother is a big part of why he was the way he was. Quote, Todd is not a bad boy. He's never been. He's been confused and his loyalties misplaced like many young men today. I realize that he's done wrong and my heart aches for the little girl, but it also aches for my son. He was only 15 years old. He didn't have a record of any kind, and he's never been in trouble before. I don't want him ruined for all time. He knows that he must be paid for what he did. He realizes that, but I truly feel that 15 years is unjust, and I don't think our system is working very well if they do this to a child. I thought the system was to make you pay for what you did, but also to help you not to do things wrong anymore and give people a chance, not to ruin them for all time. End of quote. Todd was tried as an adult. He served a 15-year sentence in an Arizona prison. A little more than halfway through his sentence, Kohlhepp's mother and stepfather divorced in Greenville County. Upon Todd's release at the age of 30, and never having had a driver's license, he moved back to South Carolina to be closer to his mom. He was placed on the government's sex offender registry. Quote, I set everything up so that he could be a productive part of our city, and he could enjoy the rest of his life and do what he loved doing. His mother also said, you don't give up on your kids. You don't do that. You can't. By all appearances, Todd Kohlhepp seemed to be getting his life together. But beneath the facade lay the sinister predator of the past. It didn't take long for him to put his past behind him and get a job. In January 2002, Kohlhepp paid his $100 restitution fee to the state of Arizona and began work as a graphic designer at Seven Sons & Company, an upstate-based sports apparel company. On social media, Kohlhepp listed his work history from January 91 to September 2001 as working for the Arizona Consumer Industries as a graphic designer with emphasis on print media, vinyl graphics, and engraving. The Arizona Corrections website shows Kohlhepp was working for the Arizona Correctional Industries. Nice try, Todd. A prison program designed to give vocational training to inmates while creating products for sale. On his LinkedIn profile, he tried to beef himself up again because he lists that he had a bachelor degree in computer science from Central Arizona Community College, a community college that provides associate degree programs that can transfer for bachelor programs at other schools. The profile says he earned a degree from 1998 to 2001 and states that he graduated at the top of my class. He found work as a graphic designer for the Seven Sons & Company in Spartanburg, and he would remain in that line of work for almost 2 years until he started to actually attend Greenville Technical College in 2003. Todd's anger was only getting worse. And with it, he roamed the streets of the small town in South Carolina as a ticking time bomb. As I said, Kohlhepp worked at Seven & Sons until November 2003. The same month that 4 people were gunned down inside the Superbike motorsport shop in Chesney, a town 30 minutes north of Spartanburg and just south of the North Carolina border. Inside, the shop's owner, 30-year-old Scott Ponder, and his mother, 52-year-old Beverly Guy, who served as a bookkeeper, were found shot to death along with 30-year-old service manager Brian Lucas and 26-year-old mechanic Chris Sherbert. The murder would remain unsolved for 10 years. The gruesome scene stunned the small South Carolina community, where rumors were that the victims were shot by a violent biker gang. The case was also stalled as deputies believed that Scott's wife, Melissa Pounder, had an affair with another man. They believed that the DNA of her husband did not match the DNA of her son. So Melissa Pounder was then repeatedly and aggressively questioned after her husband was found dead. The false narrative led deputies away from the real perpetrator, Todd Kohlhepp, who got away with the crime for almost 13 years. So as I said before, Superbike Motorsports was a motorcycle shop owned by Scott Pounder, and his mother and 2 friends work there. Todd shot them all multiple times. He had been to the shop on many occasions, always complaining about something or other. Scott's widow, Melissa, stated that she was told that it was a disgruntled customer who shut up the shop. Here's a quote from her. He bought a motorcycle from Scott previously. His motorcycle was stolen and he went to get another one. My husband and the service manager were poking fun at him, saying, "Hey, is this second motorcycle going to get stolen too? Didn't you have enough already?" They were kidding, and that made him angry. That is the kind of thing that a normal everyday person wouldn't go crazy over. End of quote. They refused to give him his money back and ridiculed him for not knowing how to ride a motorcycle. Todd explained to his mother that it made him feel really bad when he wanted to be taught how to ride a motorcycle. He rationalized the murder to his mother as he attempted to return the bike, but everybody in the store laughed at him. Enraged, Todd left the store, returned with his gun. He entered the shop from the back door, killing the mechanic, Sherbert, first. He then shot Beverly Guy outside the bathroom and Lucas at the main doorway, and he saved shooting Scott Pounder for last. He killed him in the parking lot. Regina further stated this, quote, "You know, this is why people tell their kids not to bully. This is what can happen. Todd was bullied and embarrassed, and I think he just kept it inside long enough." End of quote. His mother remained his apologist when he killed 4 people, just as she did when he attacked and bullied all his other victims throughout his life. She rationalized the behavior away, and Todd followed suit. The Superbike case remained cold for 13 years. Meanwhile, Todd would not be immediately questioned about the Superbike motor murders. He went on with his life, business as usual, as if nothing happened. He dreamt of getting a pilot's license when he was in prison, and he would actually get that from the Federal Aviation Administration on March 25th, 2006. At the same time, he transferred to the University of South Carolina, where he could earn another bachelor's degree, this time in business administration. Kohlhepp was building himself into a real estate businessman. In May 2006, Kohlhepp applied for a South Carolina real estate license, and in doing so, he misrepresented the nature of his felony conviction for kidnapping. In the application, which at the time didn't require a criminal background check, Kohlhepp wrote that he had a heated argument and breakup with his girlfriend, but that they decided to remain friends. Afterward, he wrote that Kohlhepp's dog got loose and the two went looking for it. The girlfriend's parents were worried because they couldn't reach her, and the police were called. In the license application, Kohlhepp laid out the case that specifically addresses the elements of the kidnapping charge, having a firearm, because of his alleged concern over gangs in the Phoenix area. And telling her not to move while they talked this out was misinterpreted as kidnapping. Kohlhepp wrote that he earned his GED and associate degree in computer science while in prison and had learned from his mistakes. The license was approved, and Kohlhepp worked as a broker in Spartanburg Real Estate Company while he started his own real estate business, TKA Real Estate, which employed about a dozen agents. I'm going to stop right there because there's so much more to talk about, and I think you need a little bit of break from this Kohlhepp guy. Here is a little sample of what's coming up. Okay, enough of Todd Kohlhepp and his ma for now. I want to give a sincere And grateful thank you to James R. Smith, Megan S., Emmalou72, and Angel Riri for their lovely reviews on iTunes. Thank you so much. And if you're liking the show, if you don't mind going over and rate it or give it a review, I would really appreciate that. It helps get my podcast out there. And I, of course, love to hear your feedback on things or your opinions. So you can go onto my Facebook group. It's a closed group, but you just go on and we'll let you in, as long as you're not Todd Kohlhepp. And that's MMM Pod or Mind of a Mass Murderer Pod. Also at Mass Murder Pod on Twitter and Mind of a Mass Murderer on Instagram. And I also have started a Patreon account. And if you want to go check that out, you can see some of the perks for joining it. And then I also want to see what people would like furthermore in terms of content on a Patreon page. So yeah, if you don't mind, go checking that out. So without further ado, I want to say thank you for joining me today, and take care of yourself and take care of one another. And before you turn this off, maybe you can listen to one of my favorite podcasts, Writing About Crime with Bonnie Lee. And here is her promo.
I'm Bonnie Lee, the host of Writing About Crime, a Canadian true crime podcast that looks for the story behind criminal cases. The people, the places, and the events that join together to create a narrative, not a scoop. I am not reading you the news. I am writing about crime. I hope you'll join me on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
The mind of a mass murderer. I'm trying not to get worried, but what will make somebody just switch up an innocent child to a savage killer? Evil lurks, feel the energy. What can make them just go on a killing spree? Let's take a dive in the dark, cold water, yeah, of the mind of a mass murderer.